Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very special guest for you. We have Raj. Raj Khera is the past founder, CEO, CMO of several SaaS companies, growing them from startups, infancy stages, to successful multi-million-dollar exits to public companies. He's now a growth expert, an advisor, an executive coach, and publisher of morebusiness.com. He's also a prolific speaker and best-selling author. Welcome to the show, Raj.
Thank you very much, Otto. Good to be here. Excited to share some tips with your audience.
I know, me too. The content, in case the audience doesn't know, the content Raj gives out for free, folks, in LinkedIn is valuable for any business, whether you are in B2B space or B2C. You can learn a lot, just his knowledge and experience. And that's why I wanted to bring him on the show, so hopefully he can share that with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course, my pleasure. Raj, before we go into your personal and business story, are you originally from the DMV area?
Well, I was actually born in India, moved to New Jersey when I was just a little kid, a toddler, and then lived around the United States and settled in the DMV area. And so that's where I live now. I grew up here, went to high school here, went to University of Maryland. So I am a local boy as anybody can be here. So lived here since a long time.
Oh, nice. So you're also a TERP alumni?
I am a TERP. Yeah, in fact, I used to be the chair of the board. Are you a TERP too?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, go Terps. All right. So yeah, I'm actually I used to be former chair of the board of visitors for the College of Computer Math and Natural Sciences also, but I'm an engineering alumni.
Oh, nice. So you said you were born in India and came to Jersey at a young age. How old were you when you left India?
Five. I was five. Started kindergarten here.
Oh, fine. Oh, so you don't remember much at all then.
Not much. No.
But I'm
Yeah.
sure with both parents being Indian, right? I'm sure that was just all in the culture in the household as far as the tradition and the culture, right?
Vision and the spicy food and the whole ball of wax. So yeah, we had it all. Yeah.
You know what's funny? My wife and I are neither Indian, but we love the food so much that our wedding was catered in Indian food.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it was a
So was
small.
ours, but we're Indian. So, yeah.
We were young, just a couple of years, graduated both of us from University of Maryland, and it was a small wedding, but a lot of the guests that were not Indian, they were like, hold on, what is this? Like, why, and we're like, hey, you know what? We're footing the bill. We like it. So you can either eat it or not. It's your choice. But
Right.
yeah, all of our food was catered in from an Indian restaurant.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. So you said you lived in Jersey, and then how old were you when you moved to this area?
Well, we lived in Jersey, then lived in Indiana for a few years, and then moved to Bethesda, and then to Rockville. And so been living in this area for pretty much most of my life. I think I started sixth grade in Rockville, and then went to local middle school. Back then it was Julius West Junior High, before it was even in middle school, and then high school here, and then off to University of Maryland.
So growing up here, being a local boy from Maryland, do you remember as far as what were you into? What did you like? Any activities or interests?
Well, I enjoyed soccer a lot. I was on the soccer team, but I was on the bench a lot, and so that was part of my childhood. I got my kids into soccer as they got older, and it was kind of fun watching them start in the same league that I used to play in, Montgomery Soccer (MSI), when I was younger. Of course, they actually advanced a lot farther than I did, but I had a good time. I enjoyed those things, and I think I started playing in a band probably when I was in high school. And did a little bit in college, but actually got really into it in my post-college years, and actually joined a band which used to go around the Mid-Atlantic area, and it was actually a Bollywood band. And turns out there's a big demand for that type of music, Indian music, at graduations, weddings. People just throw parties, and so we travel all around the Mid-Atlantic up to northern parts of Pennsylvania, New York, North Carolina, all over the area on weekends doing gigs. And so that was actually a really fun part of my background.
Well, it's nice. What's your favorite instrument to play?
I love the drums. They are by far my favorite. Yeah.
Okay. So were you the drummer in the band?
I was the drummer, and I also played guitar. So every now and then there'd be a song that didn't need drums, and I'd switch over to guitar. So.
Yeah. It just reminds me of my wife. I have three young boys, and my wife's always, especially the oldest one, she tells him, she's like, Liam, you need to learn how to play the guitar. He has zero interest, but she's like, it's good for you, your mind, and you never know when you get older.
Yeah, yeah, I know. We like one of mine plays instruments, the other one we kind of forced it on him, but he never really took to it. So
Okay.
yeah, everybody's got their own path.
So you finishing high school here, going into Maryland, did you know as far as what you wanted to study already, or?
Well, interestingly, when I was in third grade back in Indiana, my father bought me a Radio Shack. Back then, it was called a 65 in 1 electronics kit. And it was basically just a hobby thing where it just had a bunch of electronic parts with springs, and you could connect wires back and forth, and you could make a radio, a frequency counter, an alarm, a whole bunch of different things. And I was hooked. Well, this is what I want to do. So for years, I wanted to be an electronics engineer. And a couple of other things that kind of came in, oh, maybe chemical engineer, maybe a pilot, I don't know, all kinds of other things, but I really settled on electrical engineering. And so right out of high school, that's what I majored in college at Maryland, was electrical engineering. And I worked as an engineer for about 8 years after I got my graduate degree. But after a while, I got this itch, and I really wanted to start a company. Sort of had that actually. I think back on it, probably when I was 12, maybe. I was always forming the club in the neighborhood and those things. So I just had to scratch that itch. And so I left my very nice government engineering job and put it all out there.
Wow. You just
And yeah.
you just mentioned Raj at 12 you were, I guess, into things, business, or what do you remember as far as what were you starting back then at a young age?
Well, I had little things, and it's kind of funny. I used to try to sell stuff to my brother. So I'd take like a bunch of shampoos that we'd have in the house, and I'd put them together in one. And I'd say, "This is like a super shampoo," and I'd try to sell it to him for a quarter. Little things like that. But I think there's just seeds that I could tell when I reflect back that I had a desire to start a business from a long time ago.
So after 8 years, I guess, with a W-2 corporate job, you decided to sort of make that leap. How
Yeah.
was that? Because, especially coming, from first generation immigrant, from an immigrant household, I'm sure as education, W-2, benefits, pension, whatever, health insurance, and now taking that leap, was it? Yes.
It was scary. It was absolutely scary. And so I started easing into it a little bit. I started part-time doing some work. And what I would do is I would use my annual leave, and I had accrued a bit of annual leave. So I would use the annual leave if I had to go to meet with somebody who was either looking to hire me or that kind of thing. And I ended up getting this contract, which looked like it was going to be the start. And it was about a 3 to 6 month contract. And I thought, it's not a great runway because you got this nice job, steady income. I have a mortgage, all kinds of stuff that you've got to pay these bills, and you need cash flow for it. And I thought, well, let me go ahead and get started with this. And so I made that decision. And I think within 2 weeks, the project manager left. The entire project got canceled, and I was stuck without without a way to have a full-time income. And so I did continue to work part-time as an engineer, but I knew I really needed to get stuff off the ground. And so yeah, when you're faced with uh the cash flow situation just right in front of you, and you've got to make that mortgage payment, and you've got all these other things that you eat light and you work really, really hard to try to bring in the cash flow.
And what was that first business?
So the first business was actually I enjoyed writing a lot more than I enjoyed doing the engineering research work. And so I actually started doing a lot of writing for companies to translate their technical information into plain English so people could understand it. And they appreciated that because, like many of my engineering peers, they struggled to actually explain something really clearly. And they would take a paragraph to say something they could have said in a sentence, and sometimes use big words and so on. So I had this, I guess, ability, you could say, of being able to take this really deep techno mumbo jumbo, which is what it sounded like to a lot of people, and then translate it down into something that's very easy to understand. So my first job was as an engineer was with NIST up in Gaithersburg, Maryland, with the government, and I rose fairly quickly because I could do that. I could translate the really technical details into something that a visitor from the Department of Commerce who was just looking around to see what we were doing could understand. And so that kind of got the eye of very senior management at NIST. And so I ended up doing a lot of these, well, they used to call them dog and pony shows, but I think they're, the better word be, they were high level presentations.
Mhm.
And so that's what got me into it. And I thought, well, maybe I can make a career out of it. And so I faltered, though. That one contract that I had dried up, and then I had to figure out what to do next.
So
And
what
that's
did you,
when stuff got really interesting. So, yeah.
so what did you do next?
So right around then, my brother was finishing his PhD at Duke. He's also a Terp, by the way, which was really interesting because back then, Maryland was still in the ACC, and the games would be like, okay, who are you rooting for, Maryland or Duke? And it would always be Maryland. It would always be Maryland. So what we would do is we'd have these phone calls, and I was like, this is 1994. And he's like, this internet thing's starting to get big. I think maybe we could do something in that. And back then, you really like people were sending faxes. They were doing all kinds of just everything was just. I mean, if you recall any of those days, but we decided to just go out on our own and start a consulting company to help people get onto the internet. And that started. We started getting clients, and I really cut my teeth on customer service. One of our first clients, believe it or not, was actually NASDAQ, the stock market, because they had a branch not far from where we were, and they were looking for someone local to help them get a lot of their content onto their own intranet using the same technology as the internet to display things on a screen. And so we were hired to do a lot of that, and it was a decent contract. It was about $80,000 contract, which back then was a lot of money. It still is a lot of money. So we needed to hire people, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to run a business. I was trained as an engineer, and engineering professors have no knowledge of training you in any kind of business related thing. I mean, they can solve really deep technical problems, but I didn't have the training. So I really had to learn fast. So I started hiring some people. And the biggest mistake I made was not monitoring every single thing they were doing to make sure it was technically correct. And we had so much work that we just started getting the people to do it. Didn't have a quality control check. We would send it back, and they would start finding errors in it. So the biggest lesson we learned was that, because after a while they stopped giving us more business because the errors got to be too much. We just didn't have the bandwidth. And it was, what a lesson to learn. Losing NASDAQ as a contract, whew, that was hard. So we rebounded from that, and we started looking at other things we could do. And so what happened one day, I had this website up, and it was a site that just had a lot of the articles I had written in the past about little business tips that I was learning. And it was a pretty useful site because people who were in the technical fields didn't really know this stuff. So it was kind of like one engineer sharing business tips to another engineer who might want to read about it. But the tips were generic enough that you didn't have to be an engineer to understand it. So we get this phone call one day from the ad agency for Adobe. How much to advertise on the website? And I said, I was not expecting this call. So I'm just like, what should I say? I said, $250. And they said, okay, send us an insertion order. I was like, sure thing. And I hung up the phone. I was like, what's an insertion order? I had no idea so I'm looking up, you couldn't Google anything because back then Google wasn't even around. I think I was looking on Yahoo what it is, and I got a template and everything. So I sent them an order form. They sent the check. So Adobe's ad is on this, what was just basically a showcase website.
Mm-hmm.
And then about a few weeks later, I get another call from another agency. Yeah, we represent Fidelity. How much for an ad? I was like, oh, 250. So I'm going to say 500. 500. Sure, send us an order. I was like, damn, oh, man, too low again, because there's no resistance. It happened one more time. IBM's agency called, and they wanted to put an ad up. And by now, the ads are starting to stack, so it's not even looking that great, but they still wanted to put one on there. And I said $1,000, and they said, sure. Send it. And I was thinking, my gosh, I completely have lost track of how to price these things. I need to make it so I can put a lot more ads, because you can't just have a row of ads with a bunch of content below. It looks weird. So then we started really retooling that site, which eventually became morebusiness.com, which is what you see today online. In the course of doing that site, though, I ran into a person. Actually, it was not, I didn't run into him. It was a mentor-mentee program that Montgomery County had, where they would pair startups with existing mentors, business owners who would be a mentor. But you had to interview, and you had to go through the interview process to see if you were selected for the program. And so just as I was doing all this web stuff, I went to the interview. There's a guy who's now one of my dearest friends. Barry Friedman. He was running an accounting company called Friedman and Fuller. It was fairly large. It was a couple hundred people, accounting and consulting company. And so he interviewed me, and I remember that interview so well. I walked in the room, and there's Barry sitting at his big desk. And he just says, like, he couldn't pronounce my name. He just sit down. So he starts grilling me with questions, and I don't know how to answer them. I mean, he was asking me about all the business stuff that you're supposed to know. What's your this rate? How do you calculate this? What do you do? All these things, and I'm just like, and I felt 2 inches tall. I felt like, what am I doing in business? I have no idea how to run a company. He's asked me good questions. I don't know how to answer them. So he stops after these big line of questions, and he puts his pencil down. He goes, oh, actually, he still had it in his hand. He said, so do you have any questions for me? And I looked at him, I said, well, Mr. Friedman, it's pretty obvious that I'm going to learn a lot from this relationship. I'm going to gain a lot. What are you going to get out of it? So this guy who is being really tough suddenly then takes his pencil and puts it down, and he goes softly. He says, Raj, I remember sitting in that chair, and I know you need someone to show you the ropes. I think I can do that for you. So I go from 2 inches tall to feeling I can do this,
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't say you're selected. He said, I have a few more people to interview. So either myself or the program manager will get back to you. So Otto, on drive home, I'm thinking, I got to get this. There's no way I can't get this. What can I do to secure my spot? So I went home and I wrote him a thank you letter, and I sent that to him the next day. Mr. Friedman, really great to meet you. I'm excited about working with you. I think I'm going to learn a lot, and I really hope this will be a great mutual beneficial relationship. So a week later, I get a call, Raj, you were selected by Barry. I'm like, yes. And then about a year or two after our relationship started, we've been meeting and everything. I said, Barry, you remember back when I interviewed you, I was kind of scared. Why did you select me? He goes, oh, simple. You're the only one who sent me a thank you note. I
Wow.
mean, mic drop.
Yeah, the importance
I
of
was
a
like,
thank you.
like the simplest things that you were taught from childhood, say thank you. That's all you literally have to do sometimes.
Raj, was that handwritten or emailed or?
It was, I think I typed it and I signed it. I've
Okay.
sent handwritten notes before too, and I mailed it to him, though. It was not an email,
Okay.
which I think a lot of us get caught up in the just like quick thank you email. How many of us get postcards nowadays or just cards?
That's true.
When you get an addressed card with it's handwritten, you open it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Email, like, okay, good, thanks. You file it away. You forget you even got it, so that was important. He and I still meet. This is now 30 years later, maybe not 30, but it's been a long time. And so what happened as I became his mentee, he looked at what I was doing with this, eventually became more business side, and he says, I think there's an opportunity for this in the government industry. And so we formed a joint venture together, and co-owned it, and it was called GovCon. And so if anybody in the DC area has heard of GovCon, I was actually one of the co-founders of GovCon, which we grew to be the largest portal for government contracting information. This was before the government even put all their information online. And we got acquired 4 years later because we were the largest by a factor of like 2 or 3 compared to our next competitor.
Wow.
Is that
Raj,
was yeah.
if I can take you for a moment, when you mentioned IBM calling you and then Fidelity and the others,
Yeah.
how are they even finding you in the first place?
So that's the one thing about first mover advantage is when you're doing something early enough, you sort of get noticed, and so
Mm-hmm.
people will find us on the internet and just see that, oh, this site's got a lot of really good content for small business owners. We want to reach small business owners through our ads, so that's where we want to be. So we took that model and we built GovCon out of it. And GovCon basically, here's the thing that just made us grow really fast. There used to be a publication called the Commerce Business Daily. It was a print publication that the government printing office would mail every single weekday, which contained all bidding opportunities for $25,000 and up. It was a requirement by law that if the government was going to buy something that was more than $25,000, it had to be published in the CBD. And so every major organization, Lockheed, Raytheon, IBM, Caterpillar, GE, they all subscribed to this because they had to see all the final stuff, even though they'd be working behind the scenes ahead of time to help the procurement officers come up with the actual proposal and everything like that. You still had to get the information from the CBD. So what we did is we went and we bought the government license, the electronic versions of the CBD before the government even put this online. It was years before they started putting this information online on FedBizOps. But we took it and we just sorted it out, parsed it, and made it searchable online. So the biggest number one phone call we got from people was like, why is this free? And so we're like, well, it's free because it's got ads on it. Just enjoy. And the cool thing was because the printing office would print it one day, that means they had the file ready the day prior. So we actually got the data the day prior to printing. But when you print it, you still have to stick it in the mail, which takes a couple of days. So the companies in California wouldn't get this for like something printed on Tuesday. They'd get it Thursday, maybe Friday. But if they went with us, they'd get it on Monday. Wow, big advantage. 5 days for a government contract to get your proposals and everything ready. Big advantage. So that's how we started growing very fast. And then we scratched our heads and we're like, well, let's stop making it completely free. What we would do is we would just display one thing at a time. And if you wanted to see another bid, you'd have to click to the next page, which allowed us to show different ads. So we were making money from companies who wanted to reach government contractors, such as proposal writers, accounting companies, lawyers, people who wanted to reach, and then they would pay us to reach that audience, which was growing every day really fast. And then, so we're like, well, there's got to be another way to monetize this because people don't want to just keep typing search terms. How about we create a service where we call it CBD by email, Commerce Business Daily by email, where they give us all the search terms. We store it in their account. Every night when we get the CBD, we do the sorts based on what they're looking for and send them an email. So by about 3-4 o'clock in the morning, before they even got to work, they'd show up in their inbox was all the bids that they needed to be concerned about. It's beautiful. People bought that in spades. And so that's when we really started to get the traction. And then we started adding other things, other government databases, all public information, but very difficult to find. And so, Otto, I have the story of one database that we got it took me weeks and weeks to find it. And thankfully, I lived in the DC area. So there's a thing in the government called 8A contractors. It's the certified minority businesses. And finding the list is very difficult. All these major contractors have to allocate a certain percentage of their business to minority certified business. It's a law. And so finding these sometimes is a little difficult, but people want to market to these 8A companies. There's about 4,000 or 5,000 of them. Where do you get this list? And I made phone call after phone call to try to find this list. And I couldn't until one day I found the one lady who held the CD in an Excel format at the office for the Small Business Administration. She was in charge of the database. So I said, how much for the database? Oh, it's $25 to get it on a disk. It's like, okay, can I come there this afternoon? And she said, okay, just bring a check. So I got our company check ready and everything. And I went down to DC, no parking, couldn't find parking anywhere. And I was like, okay, let me just run in and out, see if I could do it. So I double parked, ran into the office, found her in 10 minutes, gave her the check. She gave me the disc. And I came back, thankfully didn't get a ticket. I drove back and I was like, guys, I've got it. I've got this gold now. Because it's government information, you can do whatever you want with it. So what we did was we just replicated it, offered it for $99 a shot. Anybody want a copy of this database? It saved them 3 weeks hunting down, double parking, all that kind of stuff. Sure, for $99. And we sold so many copies of this thing. And our cost of goods was $25. So, that was one of our success stories there. Now we had a lot of failures too, but this was but we really kept moving pretty fast on it.
Right. I'm sure that company that was publicizing them, physically mailing them out, they went out of business shortly after you guys came into the market, right?
Well, so the the printing office would be publishing it. So
Okay.
it's the government like sending the documents out. But we had, I mean, every major corporation was our who did government business was our customer, and so we ended up getting several people interested in buying our company because we were growing. And I think we went from 0 to about 100,000 government contractor users in 4 years.
Wow.
So it's a niche market, right? I mean, you want to know who these players are if you're in that space, because there's a lot you can market to them. It's a very lucrative business. And so yeah, so we got acquired by a high-flying.com du jour back then. Yeah.
So you sell govcon.com, and then after the sale, do you stay on for a bit, or do you say,
We
okay, let me do
did.
something else?
Yeah, so there's a lot of strategy behind how we did the sale, and part of it was I knew I didn't want to stay on with the company, and so I spoke to one of my partners who said he would stay on, and so we structured it during our negotiations that he was actually the lead guy, and so that way, when the buyer was considering buying us, they didn't feel that they would suddenly be, like, hey, we got this asset, what do we do with it? There was someone to actually help manage the full transition, help with their team, get everything integrated, all that kind of stuff. But I stayed on as a consultant for about 6 months or so, and then started scratching my head and figuring out what the next move was. So after about probably a few months, we came upon an idea, and it was based on the biggest problem we had at GovCon, which was getting our newsletter out. So back then, you did not have companies like Constant Contact and MailChimp and so on. It was a nascent industry. Again, just getting started. And when you're just getting started, like we are with AI today, whatever you do tends to get noticed faster, especially if you can start gaining attention. So we started a company called MailerMailer. It was an email marketing software company. And we basically made the entire process of sending a small business newsletter next to trivial. And so we started growing, getting some traction and so on. But I will say, I grew this one very differently. I think if I'd done it perhaps like Constant Contact and gotten venture funding, which after you sell one company, it's easier to get funding. And I did have several VCs want to invest in our company, and I turned them all down because I didn't want that type of lifestyle. I actually built MailerMailer to be a lifestyle business because you'd mentioned you've got young kids. Mine are older now; they're out of the house. But I just started having a family at that time, and I wanted to make sure I watched their first steps, coached their soccer teams, everything that goes with it. And thank God I did. Thank God I did. I have a great relationship with my kids, so I'm very, very lucky about that. So.
That's great. So when you started that company, was it just you in the beginning, or just you and maybe a few other people?
So I started with my brother also, who had started the last business with. So he's a PhD computer science, extremely smart data architect. He can see how you scale technology, because a lot of people think that you can just sort of start something and the technology just works by itself in the background, no matter how many customers you have, which is not the case. So you actually have to have a lot of back-end architecture to allow users to go from, once you hit 1,000, 10,000, can you support that? Can your architecture handle all that weight? And then to 100,000. So he actually did all the design work and everything. So he was our CTO at MailerMailer as well. And so we grew that as a lifestyle business for many years. And we had thousands of customers, made good money. I would leave at 3 o'clock on soccer practice days, go coach my kids' team, pick them up, take them home, we'd have dinner, and then I'd put them to bed. And at 9 o'clock again, I would start work until midnight. And I think this is the plight of many entrepreneurs who have young families, is that you've got to figure out how you balance spending time with them, especially on the weekends, because it's fully loaded with ballet recitals, soccer practice, you name it, it's all there. And the biggest thing I can say is don't miss those. Don't miss those, because it's such a short period of your life, and then gone.
Yeah.
So enjoy every single one of those that you can. School plays, piano recitals, everything. Soak it in. So.
No, I agree. That is so true. How did you start growing that company, as far as your marketing efforts that you were doing to get noticed?
So we put virality into the product. And so since it was an email marketing service, on the very bottom of it, and you see this very prevalent now, it wasn't a common thing back then, but we took a page out of the way Hotmail grew, which is at the bottom of every message. We just said it said powered by Hotmail. We just said powered by MailerMailer. So somebody who was an airplane hobbyist enthusiast who had a newsletter would send it out, and all the other people on his list would see, oh, this is pretty cool, I could use it for my list. Next thing you know, we got this cluster of airplane hobbyists as clientele, and then it just kept growing like that. And then, you just constantly iterate, add new features, provide really good support. There's a lot of challenging parts of growing an email marketing business as well, which is deliverability. So we had to have a whole group focused on that. And so then anyway, we ended up growing that. And as my kids got older, I looked at it, I was like, the opportunity is still there. It's still big. How about we double down a little bit? The kids don't need me as much. And so that's when we really started pouring a lot into it. And then I created another division that was just IT marketing for, email marketing for IT companies, and some other things that we did that made it pretty attractive. And so then we got bought out in 2017.
That was the second one.
Yeah. And in the course of that, I should say, so there's other starts that we had, like I started a discussion group service. That was kind of doing okay, not great. It was good cash flow, but I was like, it was a bit of a distraction. So I actually sold that.
Okay.
And inside that, there's another company that was doing email marketing that was very similar to us. So I bought them. And so we did a couple of buy and sell things in between there. But yeah, technically to the public company, like the other ones were private sales. This one we sold to a public company. It's called J2 Global. If you've heard of PC Magazine, EFAX, they own all those brands. So that's the group that bought us. And so,
Okay.
yeah.
Raj, you've been great from what it looks like, just being the first one in there with whatever product or service that you're providing. If someone's listening, how can they go about, you mentioned also briefly AI, and that's sort of the hottest thing. Maybe a year ago was sort of NFT and blockchain, that's still there. What if you want to get into a growing industry, what should you look out for?
Well, you've got to understand it. And I remember with blockchain and NFTs, I kept looking at it. I was like, I don't understand how people are going to make money because it's a hard concept to understand. So to get everybody to understand it really is going to require some massive educational thing. And I didn't see that happening for years. With AI, it's pretty easy. And it's actually easier to scare people because that's kind of what's happening to people are getting scared. Whoa. But with tools like ChatGPT on the market, you can see so many variations of how to help companies grow. So I actually advise a couple of businesses. One of them is focused on AI to help students learn faster. They've got a really good niche. They're growing very fast. Company's called MindGrasp. And there's some like others, like just figuring out a niche. You can actually go to ChatGPT and start asking it questions, and it can help you come up with ideas. And so it's one of the most untapped uses of ChatGPT I think there is out there. A lot of people think that it's just for like helping you write content, which, by the way, if you just type something, take whatever it says and publish it, it's not going to do you any good. You actually need to write something that's got some original depth. And so I've created all these processes to help small businesses really help scale their marketing efforts with literally they could do it themselves or with one marketing person on their team. And if they actually have a team, this will help the way like I do. So and that's what I teach now as an executive coach. People hire me at this stage to help them scale their business. And I know a lot about search engine optimization, but what it is taking the entire buyer journey, the whole concept of how you identify what someone's thinking in the course of their day, tying it to a product that you can offer. And the message needs to resonate with them also. So we figure a lot of those things out, walk through the full buyer journey on how someone might purchase such a product, and then we create content around that. And it creates a full map of what people need. And next thing you know, suddenly you're starting to get all these leads from Google because you're actually focused on terms that are not difficult to get ranked on, yet people want, people need information on those. So it's pretty fun. I really enjoy what I do, and I love seeing the success of my clients just grow their businesses. It's really exciting.
As far as finding yourself in Google, now that you mentioned this, Raj, providing writing content. So you're advising them to, I guess, write something and then publish it on their own website to get ranked as far as SEO?
So there's a lot to it, and that's certainly part of it. I think starting to get found, it works best right now on social, and then you tie that into things that are on your website. So let's say you're a small, I'm going to use IT company as an example. Let's say you're a small IT services company, managed service provider that provides the back-end IT services to lawyers, accountants, and so on. And so for you to get found, people do actually type in the term managed service provider. like thousands of times every single month on Google. But what they also do is they type in your city name. So managed service provider, Maryland, Montgomery County, Silver Spring, Rockville. So they type specific terms in, and it turns out there are hundreds of people doing that as well. And then if you take variations of those keywords, IT services, Rockville, um, uh, data backup services, uh, Columbia. So what you want is to create content that's got some of your local city names in there with some of the terms that are relevant for you. And so there's databases you can get that help you identify what these are. That's all part of the process that I use as well. And then you start creating content. And then there's like a really structured way to actually write the content by creating clusters of topics. Like if you wrote just one or two articles on a specific topic, Google's going to just look at you like, oh, okay. They don't think that you're an authority on this yet. If you've got 30, 40, 50, 100 articles that are all best practices for small doctors' offices who are trying to get more patients, make sure that they're not hacked, sorry. So cybersecurity for doctors' offices, that could be a niche. And if you've got so much content on that, Google will then look at you as an authority on that specific topic. So every time you publish more content on it, it will rank you faster. It will also help a lot of doctors' offices find you. Like we can help with HIPAA compliance, all these other things that they need to be concerned about. And so that's really one of the processes that you want to do.
And SEO is more of a long-term play, right?
It usually is. It's usually, and it's interesting because the longer you do it, the more faster your traction every time you put something new out. So then it becomes a shorter game after you play a longer game.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen some of my content get ranked literally in about 12 to 14 hours. Like I'll publish something one night, I'll tell Google to index it, and the next morning I'll wake up and I'll look at it, like, sure enough, look at that, it's already ranked number 22, and then slowly inches up, to page 1. And so what a lot of other people don't do in sales is first they think that they only need the right content to get ranked to get leads. That's definitely one part of the equation. It's not the only thing. Imagine you going to somebody, you're talking to them, and you're not sure if you want to go forward with their business or not, and they tell you, hey, tell you what, just go to Google and you type in whatever search term, because they know they ranked on page 1 for it. You type Google, you type their term into Google, and you see them ranked on page 1. Suddenly their credibility goes up in your eyes because you're like, oh, well, Google thinks they're much, right? And that's one of the hidden ways that you can actually use SEO to sell. Get ranked on page 1 for a term that's easy to get ranked on. And there's ways to figure out what's an easy term, what's a hard term. But if there's an easier term to get ranked on, you get on page 1 in your sales process, add that comment as a line you give to your prospects. It works like wonders. I used to do that with my teams, work like wonders.
You were just mentioning now, as far as it may be even easier on social. So as far as utilizing sort of similar tactics on social, you can do.
Yeah. And so definitely posting content on social makes a big impact. As you mentioned at the start of the podcast, I do a lot of that myself. Pretty much every single day there's some tip, and I started something recently I call SEO Tip Tuesday, and on Tuesdays you'll always see some tip related to SEO coming from me. And then on Mondays I tend to post something's a bit more motivation Mondays.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the week I'll post other tips, leadership tips. I'm in SaaS, software as a service, but other general business tips. Like the other day I posted a piece on how you figure out how much you should pay to acquire a customer, which most companies don't actually know. Like, should I be spending $100 to acquire a customer? There's some companies that literally will not spend more than $20 to acquire a customer, and the customer could be worth tens of thousands of dollars, but they can't get themselves to spend more than the price of a lunch, maybe. And so that's under budgeting for what you should actually be spending. So in that post, I actually showed very quickly the most basic way on how you calculate that. So that actually got a lot of traction and some shares and so on. So as long as I feel like I'm helping people, that's how I find social works for me, is like if I keep my audience in mind, that you do get traction. So if you wanted to have some better success on social, Like keep that as your focus, not you as a company. Like look at me. I see a lot of companies just post and people only post about themselves, about their company. Time out there. Focus on your audience. What do they want to know? So my audience wants to know tips on how to grow a business. That's what I give them.
Mhm.
So it's not like I've got like tons of followers, but it's just, it's slowly inches. I do get a lot of leads, people reaching out to me, direct messaging me from those posts.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to be my next question. You are getting leads then, because I find there's different people with.
Qualified
Yes.
leads turn into qualified clients, actually. Great clients. I've had clients that that just see my posts and they're on the fence, but then they start seeing, oh wow, he's posting regularly, and I'm actually learning from what he's posting for free. What would a conversation with him be like? And so that happens every month.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that, Raj, because there's different camps. I hear people's like, oh, why are you even they tell me, why are you wasting your time on social? What are you doing? And they don't understand. They don't get it. It's different.
I think those are from the people who aren't doing well themselves on social.
Yeah, they're
I
not even on social.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I actually have people. I remember when we were trying to sell like certain types of like SEO services because I offer that as a service too. People would say, "Oh, well, that's not really something we need because we don't get any of our business from the web." And you look at the website and you're like, oh, "You sort of answered your own question. This is why." All it is a brochure.
Yeah.
Buys a car off a brochure? Who buys it? Anything like that's worth thousands of dollars from like one page. You don't do that. It's not like you're selling vitamin supplements. And so what you do is so I explain to them how to become a thought leader and how they can take all the stuff that's here and extract it out of their head without pain. And I'll tell you right now, Otto, here's how you do it. And so what if I assigned a writing assignment to anybody on my team, and I said, could you just write a blog on XYZ? It would be weeks, maybe months, if ever, if I get something back. And I have to nag them because people just don't want to do that. That's painful. On the other hand, if I said, can we have a conversation about this topic? And they're a subject matter expert. And I just say, let's do this over Zoom or whatever, and let's click record. And I ask them a question. And I say, just as you described this, by the way, mention these 3 or 4 keywords that relate to this topic. So what happens, they can speak without any preparation because they are the subject matter expert. We've recorded this conversation. And since I've prepped them with the kinds of keywords that I want to mention, if they don't say it, I actually will mention the keywords. And then inside the conversation, I've actually got a keyword rich transcript. So I can then take the transcript and then I can use, now you can go to ChatGPT and use it to take your transcript and convert it into prose. So it's still your original thought.
Mhm.
It's not like ChatGPT, write me an article on XYZ, which every one of your competitors is doing the same thing, posting content. Google's looking at and like, yep, that's AI written, not for us. Whereas if you do it the way I just described, and in your dialogue, you share examples, stories, like I shared with you on this podcast, personal stories. Nobody else has that.
Mm-hmm.
The content then becomes 100% original. And so once you've got all of that content ready to go and you have ChatGPT help you write it, or if you got a writer to polish it up, that's great too. Now you've got really rich material. And then you got to sprinkle the SEO pixie dust on it. There's a lot of other stuff to tag it, H1 tags, 2 tags, image tags, all kinds of other stuff. Too much to go into in this dialogue. But once you do that, you'll start to see the traction. It happens all the time.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great advice, Raj.
Yeah, that's so that's actually the process that I use and I share on my webinars, and I go into a bit more detail on those, and I've got lots of free articles on how to actually use this process and execute it, and I've actually had several people ask me about a course. Can you like teach me in great detail how to actually do this? Because I can't afford to hire you, but I can afford like to buy a course to learn from you. And so I'm actually in the middle of writing a course on SEO. Excuse me, SEO for small businesses.
Oh, that's great. When is that coming out?
Hopefully really soon. Probably there's going to be one course just for IT companies this month. It's a mini course, and then right after that, I've got the outlines and everything ready for the other ones. It's just a matter of sitting down and recording. So
So you think maybe this year or next
Oh,
year?
definitely this year.
Okay.
And so this sort of one of the side benefits of being an empty nester is that I don't have to worry right now anymore about managing all this stuff with little kids. So, whether it's good or bad, I tend to work a little bit more now that the kids are out of the house. But nevertheless, I'm going to get the series done. So absolutely this year. I'm happy to share with you when the course comes out. If you want to share it with your audience, if anyone's interested, it's going to be fairly low cost way to figure out how you can learn all this stuff. You could go to YouTube and just try to learn all this yourself, but there are like a million videos. You're going to get a headache. Then you have to translate this into your line of business. So what I've done is try to just trim out all the fat and just tell you this is what you need to do. If you do these 7 steps, you're going to get this far. Now, if you want to take it farther, do these extra steps. So that first set, actually it's 10 steps. It's going to be a mini course. And it's just like, just do this if you're a local business, if nothing else. So that one will be ready this month.
That's great. Yeah, please. I can't. Please let me know, and we'll be happy to share it.
Thanks. Yeah, and you'll be able to get it on morebusiness.com. So
Okay.
a little button for courses, and you'll be able to click on that and get to it. So,
Raj, what would you say drives and motivates you today?
well, I have I've built and sold a few companies, and I've done turnarounds, and I've done other stuff after I sold my last one. And one thing that I will say is a goal of mine is to help 250 entrepreneurs become millionaires, multimillionaires within 5 years of either engaging with me or with starting their business. And this is not necessarily like paid engagement. I've got content on the site that they could find useful, podcasts that they could get insights from. And so if they're able to translate that and like figure out what to do next, it'll help shortcut their learning curve and grow a lot faster. But I would love to see 250 entrepreneurs become multimillionaires. And that's my goal, is to help them. In fact, if you go on morebusiness.com, there's a button called Millionaires, and that's actually the story behind it.
I love that goal. Now, are these businesses mostly in a specific industry or niche, or is it widespread?
It's anybody, any kind of business. It's not
Okay.
like you could be, a cook, a chef,
Hmm.
anything. So I really like, my goal is to really just help people learn how to attract customers, and keep customers, and then look at the numbers, because a lot of times people start businesses because of a passion they have for doing something, and the numbers sort of get lost in the whole process. And so what I try to do is help connect their passion with how you do numbers so that you actually make money. And so that's what I teach. Like, how do you get more customers? There's so many different ways. Let me tell you the fastest way that's going to make the most sense for your business. And that's what we do.
Speaking about this, if someone came to you, Raj, new business, doesn't matter what space they're in. Maybe they're in SaaS, maybe they're not, maybe directly B2B, B2C. What are a key pointers any new entrepreneur startup can use you would advise them?
There's quite a few. So, but if there's probably the number one thing is validate product market fit. So oftentimes someone will come up with an idea, a service offering or a product, and think it's fabulous. And we get married to that idea, and we are not open to change. We say we're open to feedback. If someone says something we don't want to hear, we don't usually listen to them. So don't be married to what you've got as your idea. Validate that people want to buy it. And the way you validate it is if they're paying for it. If someone looks at something and says, oh, that's nice, great. But if they say, oh, I got to have that, here's my money, now you got product market fit. And so you need to continuously iterate. And so there's ways you can find out how to iterate your product. I actually learned this lesson from a former VP at Harley Davidson. And what they would do when the company was struggling, he said they would actually allow people to go on test drives, let them come back, and then before they said anything, they didn't say, how'd you like it? They would say, what would you change to make you want to buy it? Such a different question. And so when you say that to your people who are using your product or your service, have a beta tester use a new SaaS product that you design. And then instead of saying, what did you think? Just say, what would you change to make you want to buy it? Now, if they say something like, well, this is cool, but I don't really have this as a need, that tells you a lot. And if you hear that enough, you will not have product market fit. You're going to struggle with whatever you've got. On the other hand, if they give you very specific feedback, not just on what you can improve, but what would make them want to buy it, now those are the notes you want to take. And that will help you get to MVP, minimal viable product, so you can actually get that thing out there and start making money on it.
That's a fantastic question. I love that.
Yeah, it's one of the best I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any specific habits or traits you feel that you have that have helped you, whether for business or just for personally?
So I read about these people who wake up really early in the morning, get a workout in, eat protein shakes all day, and then like that's not me.
Okay.
I mean, like I did go for a walk before we went on this podcast, but otherwise, like I try to just go on my like daily walk. That's like about it. But and I use that time to listen to audiobooks to learn more, or different podcasts. And but I think it's more of a mindset than I would say a habit. And the mindset is never fricking give up, period. I mean, that used to be plastered all over. My kids went to Kicks Karate when they were younger, and that used to be plastered all over the walls. And every studio they have is never give up. And so every time I use that now on them also, by the way, when they get older, they sometimes need a reminder. So, and they're like, oh yeah, and then they like plow forward. And so that's really the motto is if you start just because someone isn't buying and you're not getting traction, it's okay. You just need to pivot until you get traction. And if that doesn't work, you pivot again and you pivot again. And sometimes you might go through 50 pivots before you actually get something that has traction. I think the producers of that video game, Angry Birds, I think that was like their 30th game or something. And they were just like, okay, well, how about this game? And it was just another thing because nothing was getting traction. And suddenly that one took off. And so, yeah, I think just like mindset is just keep at it, keep at it.
What would you say is your biggest challenge with your role today with what you're doing?
I think is trying to figure out what I need to say no to. I think when I was younger, I would say yes to far too many opportunities. And I think a lot of times, even as small businesses grow, we tend not to say no to money. And what happens is your business gets so spread thin because you're sort of doing this for one customer, this for another customer, and yet something just a little bit different for someone else because you can. And what happens is you're kind of a jack of all trades to a whole bunch of people. And it's an easy trap to fall into because customers, once they like what you do, they said, hey, you did a great job on this. Could you also do this? So you don't want to disappoint the customer. So I think the biggest discipline you can develop is actually saying no. And so for me now, I get lots of opportunities to pursue this, that, and the other thing. And it's figuring out which one do I say no to is really the hard part.
Speaking about your younger years, Raj, what do you know now that you wish you would have known at the start of your business career?
Um, that it'll be okay. Because there are so many days where you feel like giving up. You feel like just putting your head on the rack and saying, I'm done. I can't handle this anymore. It's too much. It'll be okay. If you have that mindset of never give up. I mean, I'll tell you, Otto, I remember situations. My wife travels a lot for her work, and there's one time she was out of town, and I had two young kids in the house, and something happened where it was a block put on one of our IP addresses. So for email marketing, sort of what that means is like if you're sending messages and one of your clients sends something to like addresses that they shouldn't be sending to, spam, there are actually certain addresses that will put you on block lists. And somehow this customer got a hold of that. They blocked some of our bids. So we had to like really scramble to figure out what are we going to do, because that was affecting all of our other customers, which affected our cash flow, which affected my ability to put my kids through college. So I did not sleep for 3 days till we figured that out. And this was after we were running a successful business. So there's stuff that can just happen anytime, random Tuesday, that could just, you're like, we're not going to be in business for a week and in a week if we don't figure this out. So you spend long nights again figuring stuff out. And so thankfully that particular week I had my parents nearby. They were able to watch the kids in the evenings, and I really just like worked with my partners, and we got through it. But it was a scary time. So I think if I had to just look back, even not just on, like this happened probably, in my not old years, but like older years, but like when I was starting out, I think just keep at it, keep at it. Like any bump that you hit is just temporary. You can overcome it.
I love that. Coming to an end here soon, what are you most excited about? What does the next couple of years look like for you?
Well, I'm really excited about where AI is going to take us, and I think that there's so much opportunity for companies who really embrace it and use it properly, and it's happening right now. You can get a free ChatGPT account. I use their paid one; it gives me access to their next algorithm, which is good, but their free algorithm is pretty darn good too. And so I think, and that one's a lot faster than their newer one. But I think if you start to really um, invest in figuring out how to use AI across your entire company, and every business can use this. Let me give you an example. If you have a salesperson, you could go to ChatGPT, and let's say you're about to target, let's say you're calling on a law firm as a potential client. Type in something like, I'm about to call on a 15-person law firm who specializes in this type of litigation. What kind of pain points would they have if they were to purchase a product that relates to, and then type in details about your product. And the longer your prompt, the more details you can give it, the stronger the response is. You'd be shocked at how good the response is that it comes back with. And that arms you with talking points. So you can even say, okay, these are the pain points. Then you can just follow up with the next prompt saying something like, what are the talking points? Here's what my product does. What are the talking points I can use that address each of these pain points? So now in about 15 minutes, you've gone through back and forth on ChatGPT to prepare your sales team on how to handle that conversation that you're about to have on a sales call. That's just one example. There are so many, but it is changing the game for all of us.
And even that, it can give you ideas for content as far as posting on your website or on social.
It can give you podcast outlines. It can give you all kinds
Yeah.
of, yeah, yeah.
I love that. Raj, when you're not busy, I know you said you're an empty nester now, but when you're not busy working and running the business, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
I love I love biking down the C&O Canal. And in fact, I have a lot of people who see my posts on social, and they ask me for free advice, which, I mean, there's only so much time in the day. I'm happy to give free advice. So what I'm actually starting to do is do a little free advice bike ride on Saturday mornings. So some of the people that have reached out to me and want some advice about executive coaching and growing their business, I'm like, no problem. Let's all go on a bike ride because I want to do that anyway, and then we can all connect up. So if that's somebody out there who wants to go on a bike ride, they can connect with me, and I can like give them a heads up on when the next one and where it would be.
I like that. We were actually hiking the C&O Canal this, what was it, Sunday with the family. So yeah,
Yeah, it's the best place to take kids, isn't it?
it
Yeah.
is. It is. Do you actually have people taking you up and coming in with their bikes and riding with
Just
you,
start.
or?
I'm just starting it, and I just floated it by a couple of people last 2 weeks ago, and they're like, "We're in." So we just at this point we're just getting ready to schedule it and do it. So
I like that idea. You don't see it often. I know a lot of Silicon Valley does that. They go on hikes together and they, bike rides and other things. And you see that in certain industries, but that's
yeah.
great that you're doing and being active and you can, I don't know about talking business while you're riding a bike, but maybe afterwards.
That might be hard. So we might end up doing it on breaks, and I might end up just converting it to a hike or something like that. But I think just at least while we're still in good weather times, I think those are the little ways that I can give back to the community for people who are looking to grow and just see what they might be able to do. Happy to share advice, and if I've got to go on a walk anyway, I don't mind talking to people. It's just that when they want the sit down face to face, actual consultant, then I would need to charge for it because that's when I make the money. So
I like that. Do you post that on LinkedIn as far as, I know you just thinking about it and want to start it, but is that where you're?
it's where my head is right now. I've not made that public on LinkedIn. I've just made it public on your podcast.
We're the
So,
first.
yeah, but people, if they wanted to reach out to me, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
I'll give them a heads up. But yeah, I'm pretty easy to access.
I love that. Speaking about reaching out, if people want to learn more about you, Raj, and what you're doing, where can they reach out, get more information?
Type my name. It's Raj, R-A-J, and the last name is Khera, Raj Khera, onto Google. And I should be the first one that comes up, and you can click to go to my LinkedIn profile. please connect with me and just say you heard this podcast, and I'll be happy to connect with you, and we can just have a conversation from there. Also, morebusiness.com is the name of my website, and it's got lots of content on there, and I publish every day on it. And so look forward to connecting with the local community. I love it.
Raj, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure's all mine. Take care.